My husband blamed me for his job loss and started withholding food. He told our children, "Your mom's punishment helps us all." When I tried to eat, he'd say, "You don't earn meals sitting around." One night, I hid my last pay stub in the floorboards. Years later, when he was arrested for fraud, he called me from jail. I said, "I'm busy watching the news." Then he saw who was sitting beside the prosecutor. I met Brian when I was 23. I was working as a receptionist at a small dentist office in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Brian came in as a patient one afternoon, all charm and big talk. I fell for it. Hard. He told me he was in sales and had big plans, and I believed him. 6 months later, we were married. Looking back, it's embarrassing how quickly I let myself fall into that trap, but back then, I thought that's what love looked like. The first few years were fine. Brian worked long hours at a car dealership, and I picked up temp jobs here and there while we started a family. We had our first kid, Lily, then Max a couple of years later. Things got tighter, but I figured that was normal. Life wasn't perfect, but we were getting by. Then Brian got fired. He came home one day in a rage, throwing his coat across the living room, blaming me. Said I was too needy and too much of a distraction. I was stunned. I barely spoke to him most days because he was either working or watching sports with his buddies. But in his mind, it was my fault. It got worse from there. He started holding money over my head, and when I pushed back, he used the kids against me. "Your mom's punishment helps us all," he'd tell them when they asked why I didn't get to eat dinner. He'd serve them plates of food, and I'd just sit there, stomach growling, pretending I wasn't hungry. If I tried to sneak something from the fridge later, he'd catch me and say, "You don't earn meals sitting around." I started hiding snacks in my purse just to get by. I couldn't believe this was happening, but I was trapped. We were living off his unemployment checks, and he kept tight control over the bank account. He'd tear up my pay stubs from the library job I had, calling it pathetic play money. One night, I had enough. I snuck my last pay stub under a loose floorboard in our bedroom closet. I knew it wouldn't save me, but it felt like a small act of defiance. Years passed like that. The kids grew up thinking it was normal. Brian became more paranoid, always muttering about people out to get him. He started taking calls at odd hours, whispering in the garage, acting like he was running some big-time operation. I didn't ask questions. I just focused on getting Lily and Max through school. Then one day, he didn't come home. Hours turned into days. Finally, I got a call from the police. Brian had been arrested for fraud, some Ponzi scheme with fake investments and stolen money from retirees all across Iowa. I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was the scale of it. Millions of dollars. Dozens of victims. The prosecutor's office reached out, asking if I'd testify. I almost said no. I was exhausted, beaten down from years of Brian's cruelty. But something inside me said, "This is it. This is your chance." I found that pay stub I'd hidden all those years ago, and I took it to the prosecutor. It was a small thing, but it helped establish a timeline, proof that Brian had been lying about our finances long before the fraud started. When the trial came, I sat in the front row next to the prosecutor. I could feel Brian's eyes burning into me when I spoke about what he did. How he starved me, how he manipulated the kids, how he tried to make me feel like I was nothing. His lawyer tried to paint me as a bitter ex-wife, but the evidence was too strong. Brian got convicted. Sentenced to 15 years. A couple weeks after the sentencing, he called me from jail. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. When I picked up, all he said was, "I hope you're happy." I didn't even say anything at first. Then I told him, calm as can be, "I'm busy watching the news." That night, the local news was running a story on his conviction. I could hear the TV playing in the background of his cell when I hung up. Then, they showed footage of the courtroom, me, sitting beside the prosecutor, staring him down. He must have seen it too. I guess that's when it hit him. He underestimated me. He always had. But I didn't just survive him. I helped take him down. After I hung up on him, I sat there for a while, just staring at the blank TV screen. My heart was racing, but I wasn't scared anymore. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Brian's voice kept echoing in my head, I hope you're happy. Happy? No. Not happy. Not yet. Because the truth was, I wasn't done. Yeah, he was behind bars, but there were still so many pieces of the mess he made that needed cleaning up. Our kids, Lily and Max, they were a mess, too. Years of their dad's twisted words had left deep scars. I thought they'd be relieved when he was gone, but it wasn't that simple. Max had this blank stare all the time, like he was waiting for the next shoe to drop. Lily started acting out, skipping classes, sneaking out at night. I'd try to talk to them, but they'd shut me out. It was like Brian still had a grip on all of us, even from his prison cell. Then came the letters. Brian started writing to the kids from jail. He told them I'd ruined his life, that I was a liar and a thief, that he only did what he did to provide for the family. He twisted everything. Said I turned on him, that I was just as much to blame. Max believed it. He was 16 and angry at the world, and Brian's words fueled that fire. One night, I found Max sitting on the porch, holding one of Brian's letters in his hands, fists clenched so tight they were turning white. I hate you, he muttered under his breath. Dad said you ruined everything. I snapped. Your father is a liar. I yelled, louder than I'd ever yelled before. My voice shook, but I didn't care. He's a criminal, Max. He stole from people, ruined lives, and he didn't give a damn about you or me or your sister. You think that's love? That's manipulation. Max glared at me, and I could see the war going on inside him. Part of him wanted to believe me, but the other part, Brian's part, was winning. That's when I knew I couldn't let this go. I wasn't just fighting Brian anymore. I was fighting for my kids' future. So I started digging. I went back through the records, the paperwork, everything I could get my hands on from the trial. I talked to some of the victims, too, the retirees he'd conned, the single moms he'd bled dry. I listened to their stories, and it made me sick all over again. But then I found something. In one of the files the prosecutor had shown me, there was a list of shell companies Brian had used to hide the stolen money. Most of it was gone, he'd blown it on flashy cars and fake investments, but there were a few accounts still open, sitting quietly, probably hoping no one would notice. And guess whose name was on one of the accounts? Max. Brian had opened an account in Max's name, probably to hide money, maybe to set him up for something down the line. Max didn't know, of course, but it was all there, plain as day. I froze. Brian wasn't just trying to manipulate the kids, he was trying to pull them into his crimes. I had to do something. So I called the prosecutor. Look, I told her, I'm not done helping. You need to see this. She was stunned. Said she'd never seen anything like it. That's when it hit me, Brian's plan wasn't over. He thought he could still control us, even from prison. And if I didn't stop him, he'd ruin Max's life, too. That's when I knew, this wasn't just about me getting my revenge. It was about making sure Brian never got the chance to hurt anyone ever again. I wasn't going to let him destroy Max the way he tried to destroy me. Not a chance. The next few weeks were a blur. I met with the prosecutor's team every other day, handing over every scrap of evidence I could find, old bank statements, letters Brian had sent from jail, and the hidden account information. The more we dug, the worse it got. Brian had been planning something even from behind bars. He had named Max as a beneficiary on multiple hidden accounts, probably so when Max turned 18, he'd become the legal owner without even knowing it. The money was dirty, stolen from hardworking people, retirees, and families. If Max had touched it, he'd be liable. Brian wasn't done ruining lives, he was just getting started. I sat down with Max and Lily one night, laid everything out in plain language. They sat across from me at the kitchen table, silent, wide-eyed. I told them the truth, your dad used you. He was going to drag you down with him. I can't let that happen. We have to finish this. Max was shaking. He didn't say a word at first. Then he looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the boy I'd raised, the one who used to build Lego towers and make me Mother's Day cards. Mom, he said, his voice breaking. What do we do? I squeezed his hand. We do the right thing. We take it all down. The prosecutor filed new charges against Brian, conspiracy, fraud, and attempted financial exploitation of a minor. The media went wild. Every news station in Iowa ran the story, convicted fraudster attempts to involve own son in scheme. I was subpoenaed again, and this time, I walked into that courtroom tall and steady. Brian sat there in his prison uniform, pale and gaunt, staring at me with that same look. Like I was still his property, still the woman he could starve and break. But now, he was the one trapped. When I took the stand, I didn't hold back. I told them everything, how he'd blamed me for his failures, how he'd punished me by withholding food, how he'd turned the kids against me, how he'd tried to ruin our family. The judge listened, stone-faced, but I could see the fire in her eyes when I told her about the account in Max's name. The final verdict? Another 10 years added to his sentence. When they read it out, Brian didn't say a word. He just sat there, shoulders hunched, staring at the table like it could save him. But the best part came after the sentencing. Max and I walked out of the courtroom, and the reporters swarmed us. I saw Brian's lawyer whispering something to him, but Brian just sat there, defeated. That's when the prosecutor approached me and handed me a copy of the final court order. Brian's assets were being liquidated to repay the victims, every last dollar. The house, the cars, the accounts. Gone. I looked over at him one last time as the guards led him away. He glanced up, and our eyes locked for a second. I could see the realization sink in, he had lost everything. And then I said it, loud enough for him to hear, enjoy your meals in prison. I hear they don't care how hard you worked for them. The guards pulled him away, but not before I saw the look on his face. Shock, rage, and finally, fear. Max and Lily stood beside me. Lily was holding my hand. Max just nodded, silent but strong. We walked out of that courthouse into the sunlight. I knew it wasn't over, there would still be healing to do, therapy sessions, hard talks with the kids. But for the first time in years, I felt free. Brian had tried to make me a prisoner in my own life. He tried to turn my kids into weapons. But in the end, I took everything back. And he was the one left with nothing but a cold cell and a lifetime of regret. Brian was gone, locked up tight, and the world kept moving. But the fallout from everything he did wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After the trial, life didn't magically get better. The house we'd lived in was seized, part of the court's order to pay back the people Brian had scammed. I didn't care. That house held too many ghosts. I packed up the kids and what little we had left, and we moved into a small rental on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was ours, and it was quiet. I kept working at the library, picking up extra shifts when I could. Max got a job bagging groceries, and Lily started tutoring other kids to make some money. We were rebuilding, piece by piece. But Brian wasn't done. A few months after the sentencing, Max got another letter in the mail. The return address was the prison. I opened it before Max could see it. Brian had no right to talk to him after what he'd done. Inside was a mess of scribbled words, him whining about being set up, how I'd turned the kids against him, how the world was out to get him. But then I saw the real threat, they'll come for you next, Max. You're not as innocent as you think. Your name is all over the papers. You'll see. Just wait. That was it. That was the moment I knew Brian wasn't just rotting in a cell, he was scheming. Still trying to poison Max's mind, still trying to make him carry the weight of Brian's crimes. I took the letter straight to the prosecutor. They opened an investigation into Brian's contacts in prison, and it didn't take long to uncover what he was up to. He'd been trying to funnel messages out through other inmates, telling them to keep the heat on Max, make it look like Max was part of the scheme all along. Brian was trying to smear his own son to protect himself. It all came crashing down when one of those inmates flipped, testifying that Brian offered to pay him in commissary credit if he'd help set Max up with false charges. The judge was furious. Brian got slapped with another charge, witness tampering and attempted coercion of a minor. Another 5 years. That made it 20 years total. I remember standing in the back of that courtroom during the new hearing, watching Brian shuffle in, shackled and small. His face was pale, hair thinning, skin sagging. He didn't even look at me this time. Didn't look at anyone. When the sentence was read, I didn't feel joy, exactly. I felt finality. I turned to Max. He was staring straight ahead, fists clenched, jaw tight. I could see the tears welling up, but he held them back. Lily reached over and took his hand, and for the first time, I saw them standing together, not as victims of their father's twisted games, but as siblings. As survivors. We walked out into the daylight, and I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. But I wasn't done yet. I went back home, pulled up my old laptop, and opened that hidden folder I'd kept for years, the one where I'd stashed everything Brian ever sent me, every lie, every bank statement, every text. I sent it all to the victims, the families he scammed, the retirees he ruined. I wanted them to see it, to understand exactly who Brian was. And then, I started writing my own story. I posted it online. Every detail, every moment, every betrayal. I told the truth, in my own words. No more secrets. No more hiding. I exposed Brian for the monster he was, not just to me, but to the world. And when the local news picked it up and ran a segment called The Wife Who Brought Down a Con Man, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine, watching the TV as they showed Brian's mugshot. The reporter closed the story with a line I'll never forget: in the end, justice wasn't served by the courts alone, but by the woman he thought he could break. I turned the TV off, sat back, and smiled for the first time in years. Brian had tried to bury me. But I dug him up, and I buried him instead. For good.